Hello, I'm Hannah from the Lethbridge Transparency Council, and I'm here interviewing Dale Leier, a city council candidate for our 2021 municipal election. So welcome, Dale. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Hannah.
Absolutely. I'm going to get started right off the top here. So what do you think needs improvement in the processes of city council and administration, and how would you make these improvements?
Well, that's a great question because it's a big question. So basically, you have a situation where the council administration use a convoluted committee of the whole, standing committee, and council process. Now, that makes it easier actually for the administration and council to kind of keep things, out of the light for citizens. It doesn't really aid the transparency. So I think city council should hold a committee of the whole meeting the first and third weeks of every month. And that's comprised of the mayor and all members of the council. But the meetings are not considered to be formal council meetings. And it gives them a chance to iron things out before they go before the full council. Because right now we see some very interesting conversations and policy formulation in the actual council meetings while they're trying to write bylaws. Whereas by the time it gets to council, this stuff should all be worked out. So they're just voting yay or nay, questioning, clarifying and stuff, but they shouldn't be trying to write laws on the fly in the council meeting. That could all be worked out beforehand.
Yeah, that's a very interesting suggestion. What recommendations would you make to engage more citizens in the city's municipal development plan and process?
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to consult citizens with a great deal more frequency and broadly. Citizens know what they like and what they don't like. And with the technology that we have today, we can certainly do a lot more to get their input. But it seems like right now the city engages consultants to, create a passive by the pound documents. I mean, some of these things are so onerous, I can barely wade through them, So, that's a really big part of it. And the municipal development plan, though, is just that. It's a plan. So a new city council needs to review and simplify the MDP so it's a much shorter and concise document and helps to identify the visions for areas of the community to grow and develop from there. Neighborhood development plans, with input of affected citizens in those areas would help make that a much more relevant document. I know in particular, a lot of people on the north side really don't feel that they're being consulted enough. We could certainly do a lot more, I think, in that regard, to bring them into the process. So that's some things that I think we could certainly do to improve.
Yeah, it certainly is a hunk of a document at 267 pages. So it's
and not all of it is actually, real information. It's overviews and summaries I think we can really boil it down. And the whole point is plain language means a lot. I think it actually communicates more. Big words don't necessarily communicate better.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think the top 3 issues are in the community, and what do you plan on doing to address these issues?
Well, I'll tell you, again, another great question. I actually had trouble narrowing it down to 3. So, public safety, I think, has to be a major concern for people, so these are my perception of the top 3, not necessarily in priority, but public safety permeates the entire depth and breadth of the community, including the ways we work, play, do business, and shopping. But it also includes our quality of life and our ability to attract visitors, residents, and investors. So I think we really need to get a handle on that. It's an investment, but it's one that'll pay over and over and over if we get it right, and it'll certainly cost us, as we're seeing, if we don't. Another one, of course, is our spending priorities. The city's been overly focused on wants versus needs. And as a result, things like public safety, affordable housing, homelessness, and addictions are being neglected because, again, there's only so many dollars to go around. So I think prioritizing our spending on wants versus needs, on needs versus wants is what they should be doing. And then another big issue is excessive taxation. I mean, we live in a competitive world and it's a competitive marketplace, and we're frequently competing with other communities for business. And so Right now, the only reason our debt load is considered manageable is because our taxes are high. And also the ratio of business to residential taxes makes Lethbridge uncompetitive, especially when we sit right next door to the county of Lethbridge, which has tax rates that are almost too low. So we could find ourselves priced out of the industrial market if we don't kind of get that stuff more in line with other communities are doing.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the regional perspective,
Mhm.
particularly when Lethbridge services a lot more than just the 100,000 people that live in it. So
Yes.
absolutely. So on that kind of similar lines, what would you want the city to do to create a good environment for business in Lethbridge?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Again, another great question. So in addition to equalizing the residential and business tax rates, the city should give non-residents businesses, that is ones with an actual business location, a vote in the municipal elections. Otherwise, it's taxation without representation. And so that'd be one thing they could do, is that people who are providing the bulk of the funding that the city uses with a say in that. So they would certainly be attuned to what the city can do in that regard. Another thing is to reduce the amount of red tapes and hoops that businesses need to jump through, in order to establish and expand their operations. I've certainly seen it firsthand with businesses that just want to do minor upgrades and repairs. And, they've just come out of COVID. If I hear another city inspector say, well, if they can't afford it, then they should move or close, or maybe they shouldn't be in business, I'm going to lose it, because that's who's paying the bills. We've got to nurture the roots, or else there ain't going to be no fruit to pick from the tree. So things like that, reducing the fees for permits and inspections, stuff like that, just allows businesses to grow. And that means more employment. That means ultimately more taxes. It's just, like you say, the roots that feed the tree.
That's certainly a really interesting suggestion about providing votes for businesses in Lethbridge. So another question, in the most recent MDP process, what decisions did you agree with and what decisions did you disagree with?
Well, again, the city confuses citizens and organizations and businesses with their entire structure. It could certainly stand to be a lot more streamlined, but the municipal development plan is a framework only, so things like planning, transportation, subsurface requirements and stuff should be based on the zoning bylaw. And so applications would either confirm with existing zoning and proceed through a review, or the application requires a rezoning process. So staff reporting should not be just done by the city planner, but also include a report from the engineer, as well as from the social planner. So things like benefits to the community, such as helping people with interim housing and social support, would help move them into a better path forward. Again, I'm just, like I say, not going to dig too deeply into stuff just because I don't want to overwhelm people. But you take a look at the situation with the Streets Alive mission recently. Committee members were actually able to approve the plan for a larger, more functional building, but they deliberately did not approve the increase, even though there's such a need for additional space. The MPC has been successfully frustrating this building plan for a number of years, and that behavior needs to stop.
Yes. So I know transit's something that's certainly top of mind, and transportation in general in Lethbridge. We even have a question on the ballot about it. So how do you plan on prioritizing transportation in the future for Lethbridge?
Well, that's the way it's been written up is it's not the greatest question, because transportation is part of the lifeblood of a community. But in particular, the road system supports such a wide range of uses. To say, well, we should focus this over that use. They all use the same roads. Now, there are some things that they can do maybe to facilitate some types of traffic. For example, some of these traffic circles and things like that, what we're seeing, they're fine for cars and bikes, but they certainly don't lend themselves to transport vehicles, and in commercial areas, that's not really forward thinking, But in terms of what we need to do, actually, public transit should be immediately restored to the previous levels. And if it's a matter of saving a few $100,000 a year, all they need to do is reduce the hours of service by 1. And that's from the transit people themselves have told me that. So they have totally put the system into disarray, and it wasn't necessary. So I think that's the first thing they need to do is restore service, because it is in effect an essential service. But in terms of priorities, single occupancy vehicles will always remain the more popular form of transportation because of their versatility, flexibility, safety, security, and flexibility for everyone, from businesses and public services to individuals traveling for work, recreation, leisure, shopping. We'll always be a single vehicle community. Again, our size and our density and even our regional role ensures that. Next, commercial vehicles. I mean, they're a necessity, and they support all activities: business, government, regional economic activity, commerce. We can't function without them. Multi-occupancy vehicles, that's mostly a personal choice, like ride sharing and so forth. Lethbridge isn't Vancouver or Seattle. So, the benefits of having MOV lanes where only certain types of vehicles get priority, you're not going to save much. If they could do anything, it would be just to constrict some of the bottleneck areas right now where, accessing Whoop Up Drive, for example, and stuff that could do a lot to expedite traffic without a huge investment. As far as pedestrians are concerned, they're actually very well served with a very large investment in sidewalks. I know communities like North Vancouver and a number of others, they only put a sidewalk on one side of the street. Whereas here, every single block in every area of the city has a sidewalk all the way around it. And I would be hard pressed to find a place where you can go in the city where you can't walk. So pedestrians, I think, are pretty well accommodated in that regard. I mean, if people are thinking there's something else like a trail system or other, whatever that would be valuable, I'd like to know of it. And again, for me, bicycles, it's more of a lifestyle choice, given their obvious limitations in terms of range, speed, versatility, all-weather suitability. So I think efforts to accommodate bicycles should be focused on maybe utilizing existing surfaces such as roadways and sidewalks, and seeing what can be done, to maybe inject a little more safety in their operation, but creating an entirely new bicycle path system paralleling the other surfaces is a huge expense. And studies have shown in other communities, they just don't get used that much. So, that's just something that I kind of suggest. But just before I leave that, just with regards to transportation, there are other new types of transportation modes coming down the pipeline, things like autonomous vehicles, but also we have enabled in the federal legislation what are called low-speed electric vehicles, which are great for neighborhoods and stuff like that. For whatever reason, the provincial government hasn't approved them, but again, we can lobby them to get permission on a trial basis to use low-speed electric vehicles, because again, they're one-passenger vehicles. They use electricity. They don't take up a large footprint on the road. It's always amazed me that 90% of all vehicle trips consist of one person in a 4-passenger vehicle. And one way to get around that is to provide alternative vehicle types. And sadly, we don't see a lot of discussion in that area.
That's a really interesting suggestion. I've never heard. I'm going to go and do some research on that now, on those single occupancy vehicles, because that's a really interesting suggestion.
That's why I'm the ideas candidate.
Perfect. So moving on to these last questions, just dealing with some finances. So where do you think the city should be spending more money?
Well, any additional spending should be subject to a rigorous cost benefits analysis, and I think an objective set of metrics so that the city can make sure we're getting the most value for the money, but also that citizens can be assured that we're getting the most value for money. So when we look at additional spending, let's look at public safety. I mean, first thing I would do is I would restore the $1 million that was cut from the police budget, and I would add another $500,000 per year over the next 4 years. Because if we don't get a handle on our public safety issues, this could become a community where people are going to say, you don't want to live in Lethbridge. It's dangerous, it's unsafe, And you start that tailspin, and pretty soon it's going to really affect your whole appeal. So we need to really be careful that that the crime cycle doesn't spin out of control. So yeah, it's not cheap, but it needs to be done. My second biggest item, and again, these aren't necessarily in priority, but should be taken collectively, is economic development. Lethbridge spends about $8.50 per person per year on economic development. Places like Calgary spend $300 because the return on investment is 100 to 1. Actually, it's a little over 100 to 1, 104, 106, something like that. So what I would do with economic development is, again, I would add another $500,000 per year over the next 4 years. And that'll help us grow the economy and the tax base. So that way we've got more money coming in, while being able to lower the individual rate that each business and person pays. And it'll just help make Lethbridge and Southern Alberta a thriving destination. Maintenance. I mean, this is an issue that people are really starting to wake up to, because if you don't maintain your infrastructure, it's going to cost you more down the line. So, spending again another $500,000 a year to ensure our facilities are kept up to par, and make our parks appealing and safe, right? Other things I'm really big on are things like youth sports, because that's what keeps the next generation active and engaged. So we want to promote healthy lifestyles and lay the foundations for well-rounded lives, because I think, again, one thing that's missed in this whole addictions crisis is the importance of prevention, and giving people other perspectives and habits and things to look forward to and hope for. Speaking of public health, of course, investments in the 4 pillars approach to addiction. But again, this stuff can't be done in isolation. It's all connected, but they are separate and distinct issues. So homelessness and affordable housing, they need to be addressed as well at the same time, because to not do so is actually costing us more. And and then a big thing for me is reconciliation, to support a strong and productive relationship with the Indigenous citizens. And that has economic and social benefits for everyone. I really think we need to be more forward-looking on the way that we address our issues in that regard. And again, with many of the First Nations people I've talked to, they want the same things we do. They want family, they want health, they want jobs, and they want a safe, secure future. They're really no different than us. They come from a different background, and they've had different issues to deal with. But going forward, as they say to me, we're all the same. And I agree. So that's kind of my view on that, on more spending. We have to be selective. We have to make sure we're going to get our money's worth. But there's areas that we could definitely be, investing more.
Yeah, certainly ties back to your ideas, man. You've got lots of great suggestions there, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
On the other side of the coin, where do you think we could reduce spending in Lethbridge?
Well, I'll probably make myself a lot of enemies. Yeah, what are politics for, right? But I think the thing is, arts and culture have really gotten at least their fair share. And I think we can just, put a bit of a hold on that for a while. Certainly arts and culture are what make a community an appealing place to live. But again, at what point do you begin to get diminishing returns? I really haven't seen any evidence to support the argument that people move here for arts and culture, or that they would ever be likely to. I think it might be a way of keeping people once they move here. But again, in the face of these other social issues, it just strikes me as to be a little out of balance to be worrying about, a performing arts center at the same time there's people that are homeless. I think we need to get our priorities just squared away on that. So other than that, I would just go through all of our spending line by line and just say, okay, how much is for wants and how much for needs? Needs being the things that we can't live without, wants being the things that we would like to have because it makes our life better, and prioritize it on that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the last 2 questions I have for you relate to capital growth. So what criteria would you recommend that the city examine prior to approving these large capital projects?
Indeed. Well, until we get our, as I say, until we get our financial house in order, we need to focus on spending no more than necessary to maintain the health, safety, and order by using a cost-benefit criteria. Again, just to make sure that we're getting the greatest public good, the best, the greatest value for money, and focusing on those needs. And then once we get things all sort of squared away, then by all means, we want to look at the things that make the city a more fun and interesting and appealing place to live. So to me, that's a job one.
Yeah, so that ties really into our last question, which is talking about our current capital investment program and plan, which looks at the next 4 years. So what expenses are you in favor of and what expenses are you not in favor of?
Again, another excellent question, and I'll try to be serious about it. But frankly, I think the whole thing should be thrown out and started over. I don't think they should have proceeded with it right before they know very well there was another mayor and council about to come in. You know, and I have just wondered, you know, why would they do things and try and set the stage and basically try and, I don't know, stack the deck, if you will. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but basically try to force the hand of the next city council to go down, you know, certain avenues. I'm not really comfortable with that. And I kind of hunch the citizens of Lethbridge aren't impressed with the way that all rolled out, but we'll certainly see how that plays out on election day. But if I had to pick two, again, hard to do so, but if I had to pick two, it's some of the most expensive ones. So the waste collection and curbside organics is just unnecessary, superfluous, and largely ineffective. Many people I know, like in our household, we already do our own organics recycling. You know, so again, the cost versus the benefit, I don't think anybody has looked at that. And I'm just really concerned when we start doing all this virtue signaling with hard-earned taxpayer dollars that we just can't afford to waste. I think we really need to look at saying, okay, what are we actually going to accomplish here with this collection program? And that also applies, I would say, to things like the electric bus and charging infrastructure. It's very costly and ultimately very ineffective, considering the overall life cycle costs and the fact that we source 90% of our electricity from natural gas. So you're going to take the natural gas out of the ground, you're going to produce electricity, you're going to transmit it halfway across the province, you're going to put it in a bus on a battery, and why not just have LNG hybrid buses? Because there's a good argument to be made for hybrid vehicles, because again, they capture the energy from descending and braking, and then they reapply it to acceleration and climbing. That's fine. But you don't need to power them, like I say, with natural gas, produce half a province away. They can just put the natural gas right on the vehicle. So, you know, that to me makes a heck of a lot more sense. And it's going to be a lot less expensive in the long run. So those are the two that kind of stick out amongst all the others. But as I say, I really think the entire program should have been postponed, like a number of the other decisions they've been making lately should have been postponed, knowing that a new council is just a matter of weeks away.
Yeah, I know certainly some comments that I've heard from other candidates as well, just looking at the plans that have been produced recently and going over them with a new council in mind, with a new mandate from new citizens. So that's definitely something that seems to be top of mind for all of the candidates as well. So
good to hear.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dale, for participating in this interview. I really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you'd like to add or ways that people can get in touch with you?
I'm so glad you asked. So one of the things that really bugs me is the current council procedures bylaw is, again, another one of these huge, onerous, and unnecessary documents. It really should be shortened into a much abbreviated document in plain language for council and in alignment with the Municipal Act, the Municipal Government Act, the MGA. And then it can be supported by a council decision guide, which provides a framework for addressing local issues. And that gives, you know, council the flexibility it requires and guides the decision-making process in a way that is understandable by council, administration, and most importantly, by the citizens.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dale. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hannah. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing how everything plays out on the 18th.
It will be interesting, won't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again, and take care.
Thanks.